श्रीशैलेशपादं श्रीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवं यतीन्द्रतवनं वन्दे रम्यजामातरं रामानुजदयापात्रं श्रीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवं यतीन्द्रप्रवणं वन्दे रम्यजामातरं अस्मद्गुरुभ्यो नमः. Before we start any kind of discourse in Hindu tradition, it's always customary to invoke the blessings of our teachers and to acknowledge their contribution to our lives. I was asked to speak at the conference about myself, which is not a popular topic for myself. And I've not done this before, because normally I'm called on to give dispassionate lectures on Hinduism or various aspects thereof. So for me to be talking about myself is very unusual. But it suggested that perhaps an account of my own personal journey would be of some inspiration to others. I was born in South Africa. My mother was Jewish, my father was Christian, but our household was very liberal. I was born in 1957, at the time when apartheid was becoming seriously entrenched. But I grew up in a city called Durban, in which the majority of the population in that city was Tamil Hindus. And the area in which I grew up was a mixed suburb of white Anglo-Saxons and Tamil. And my family home, in actual fact, was just behind the local Siva Vishnu temple, which was the biggest in Durban. And my mother always employed Indian Tamil women to look after us as children, because she had to work. Our family wasn't very rich, so they needed to income. So from my childhood, I grew up with Tamils and Tamil culture. And in fact, all my nannies used to speak to me in Tamil, and used to tell me stories about the gods, which I absolutely loved. I used to spend my afternoons after school playing in temple grounds, attending all the festivals, and I particularly loved the Karka festival, and then there was the Party festival, and of course the feasting that went with every festival. So this is how I grew up. This is what I loved Hinduism at a very early age. And my parents decided, being liberal, that we should have a rounded religious education. So they sent us to Sunday school as well as to Saturday school. Sunday school was for studying Christianity, and Saturday school was for studying Buddhism. I don't know why, but we didn't last very long. None of my siblings, my brother and my sister, I lasted very long in Sunday school, further, if anything, in Saturday school. And so I was studying Christianity, Judaism, the Bible, as well as indulging myself in the study of Hinduism. And there weren't a lot of resources at that time. There was the internet, the books on Hinduism weren't readily available. So I joined the Divine Life Society and found a mine of information from the seminary work. And my major crisis came about when I was about 13. And all Jewish boys are confirmed or initiated at the age of 13 for a bar mitzvah. And I was studying for my bar mitzvah, and we came to a passage in the Bible which describes the invasion of the land of Canaan. And God said to the children of Israel, go into the land of Canaan, kill every man, woman and child, every living thing, and take the land to yourself. Now as a child, I was horrified. I was a young boy, very inquisitive. And I said to my teacher, how can we accept that God is compassionate when He tells His chosen people, go into the land of Canaan and commit genocide on His command? And they subsequently did this, and it's written in the Bible, the cities that they attacked, and how many women they killed, how many babies had their heads bashed out. I was actually horrified. I said, look, I can't accept this. And my teacher said, don't ask questions, don't even doubted. This is the word of God, accept it. And I rebelled, and I seriously rebelled. I said, I will not accept the word of God simply because it's the word of God when it conflicts with my reason. And so that kind of brought an end to my any kind of affection that I had for the Judeo-Christian tradition. Now, at this point, I must reaffirm to you that I am primarily a Hindu priest. So I am not a sociologist. I am not unbiased. In actual fact, I'm very biased towards Hinduism. So if I do say anything that offends non-Hindus that may be in the audience, please forgive me, but I'm talking from my own personal experience and my own personal journey. So to say that I find my greatest satisfaction in Hinduism doesn't mean to say that the other religion is invalid. On the contrary. There are different degrees of validity. But my personal journey is with Hinduism. And the way that I became more, we can say, entrenched in the Hindu camp was from my studies with Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Then it was a stage when I was about 14 or 15, my family decided that my elder brother was getting involved in politics, anti-apartheid movement. The special branch were taking interest in our family. So it was at that time my family decided to leave South Africa and we migrated to Israel, where I completed my education. I studied Hebrew, Arabic, and I thought, well, while I'm in the Middle East, we're living in Jerusalem, which is the center of the Abrahamic religion, and I thought, well, I might as well study as much as I can about these religions. And only to contrast, to make sure that the path that I was on was the correct path for me. And then from there I went to India to fulfill my life's dream, because with an Israeli passport it was much easier to get to India. When I was growing up, white South Africans couldn't get to India. So when I was 19, I went to India, to Rishikesh, and I joined the Sivananda ashram. I was there for about a year and studied with Swami Krishnananda, Swami Chidananda. And I developed an intense love for ritual. I mean, I had it the whole way through my life when I was growing up in South Africa, when they were having festivals at the temple. I just loved the ritual. And I thought I'd really like to study this more. But in India, it's very hard to get into the society's structures. It is very hard, particularly for Westerners at that time, to get into the inner political circles to study any kind of depth. But through my introductions that I had at Sivananda Ashram, I managed to find a book full in Banaras of Swami Sanjayananda. And he accepted me into the room and I began studying Sanskrit and Vedic ritual. And that took me into about the third year of being in India, and then I went back to Israel because I had visa problems, and I had to join the Israeli army. So I was in the Israeli army for a year and a half, which was a great transformative experience, I can assure you. And then when I came out of the army, I decided that I really needed to get a profession, because being a professional student is not a way to make a living. So I studied nursing. I completed a nursing degree and then decided to go back to India, particularly South India, to study more of the South Indian tradition. Because the problem in India is that North India was ruled by the Muslims for 600 years and by the British for 200 years. And so the Hindu in the North is very, it's not pure. Whereas in the South, in the deep South, the Muslim influence was never strong. There were incidences and periods of Muslim rule, but as a general rule, the Hindu tradition in the South is at its purest. And I really want to get back to studying more of the Southern tradition. So I ended up with the introduction to Madras, and I couldn't break into the community, the Brahminical community. And one day I was in despair and I was driving in the rickshaw past the Sanskrit college, the Madras Sanskrit college, and I stopped, went in, and a woman was sitting there. And I said to her, I'm interested in obtaining books on South Indian Vaishnavism, particularly the Pancharatra Agama. So she said, there's nothing in English, there's only books in Sanskrit. I said, well, I studied Sanskrit, even something in Sanskrit would be beneficial to me. So she said, well, you can only obtain them from a lady called Sita Padmanabhan, who lives in Tinagar in Madras. So I went to see this lady, and it turned out she was an ex-Sanskrit professor of the college, and she'd written many books on Pancharatra Agama in Tamil, and she'd actually translated many of the Vaishnava Agamas into Tamil. And she agreed to take me on as a student to study under her, went back to Israel, then eventually went back to South Africa to further my nursing studies, but kept up my studies with Mrs. Sita Padmanabhan. Then, I think it was in about 1982, I wrote to her and said I want to be initiated. So she said, this is an impossibility because the Sri Vaishnavas, particularly in South India, are very fanatical, and they've never initiated a white man before. You are a lecha means barbarian. So even though you may be knowledgeable, they won't accept you. So then I quoted to her stuff that I'd learned from her, saying that anybody who has the qualification, whatever be their caste or their gender, can be initiated in the Pancharatra tradition. So he said, yes, theoretically this is correct, but practically they won't do it. I said, well, I'm surrendering to Perumal, you just do the needful. I'm coming to India in March of 1983, I think it was, and do the needful. So I arrived in India, went to see her, and she said to me, I've organised a meeting with one of the scholars from the Parvati temple in Tiroli, Madras. So I went to see him and he said, look, even though I am an Acharya Purusha, I will not initiate you. And he said, I know that I should and all that, but I have many disciples. And if I initiate you, they are so prejudiced that they will leave me. And I will lose my income. He was very honest. And he said, so it's only for the sake of my income that I will not initiate you. But the Swami of Sri Rama has agreed to meet you. So he said, I'll take you there. So he took me to Sri Paramadur, and the GF Swami of Sri Paramadur is, Sri Paramadur has now become very famous because it's supposedly Rajiv Gandhi's family. But in actual fact, its fame, its real fame, is it was the birthplace of Sri Rama Ramanujacari, one of the greatest teachers of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. So he met me and he said, I'm prepared to initiate you, but you need to be tested for 3 days. So for 3 days I was tested by the elders of the community, and after 3 days of intensive questioning, he called me and he said, look, they can't find any fault in you, and I agreed to initiate you. He said, in actual fact, I knew that I was going to initiate you, but I wanted them to be happy with it first. And he said, even now, some of them are unhappy because I want to initiate you as a Brahmin, and they say that I should be initiated only as a non-Brahmin. So he said that I'm going to initiate you as a Brahmin in spite of that. The word on Giriraj Swami is famous throughout South India because he has an outreach program particularly to the Dalits and to the marginalized communities in South India. He's one of the only acharyas that actually goes to their colonies and teaches them and initiates them and gives them the sacred thread initiation, which a lot of Brahmins find is highly reprehensible. But this is part of the caste politics that happens in India. But he has always been, he's called the military deer, because he was a flight lieutenant in the British Army, and he still has those military qualities in the Mata. And so I was initiated, and about 3 years later, once I engaged in more studies with Giriraj Swami, he gave me the title of Acharya and gave me the authority to initiate into the Bengalite Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya of Acharya. That's basically where I'm at. I've been living in Australia since 1982, and I've been practicing as a nurse part-time and as a priest here in the community. There's a number of people in the audience here whose weddings I've performed, and I've seen generations grow up. So children that I did their blessings when they were kids, I ended up marrying them in their 20s. I am currently engaged in a lot of teaching programs. We run a yoga retreat in Bali every year. I also am currently engaged in a Pujari training course in America, which I fly over there from month to year to train people to become priests. And generally engaged in the community. Now, as I said before, Hinduism for me is my passion, it is my life. There's nothing for me that gives any meaning to my life more than Hinduism. And in order to really appreciate where I'm coming from, why I love Hinduism so much, it requires some comparison between the Islamic religions, which are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and the Parramatta coalition, which is Hinduism and Buddhism. Natural fact, as a great scholar said, like Hinduism for export. So there's not a big difference between Hinduism and Buddhism. What you say about Buddhism is equally applicable to Hinduism. And I think really in order to understand the religious politics in the world at the moment, you really need to differentiate between these two poles of spirituality. There was a book written by a scholar at the Jerusalem University called Between Benares and Jerusalem, which is the two great polarities of religion in the world today are Benares and Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the focus of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and Benares is the center of Hindu and Buddhism. And these are the two polarities. And I think one problem with a lot of modern Hindus and Hindu teachers is the problem of religious relativity, where a lot of Hindu teachers will say, oh, all religions are equal, all religions are good. Well, this is not quite so. They may all be good in their essential features of morals. Every religion says don't murder, don't kill, don't rape, to enemies, etc., etc. On a very superficial, basic, sociological, moral level, all religions do teach the same thing. But when it comes to philosophy, or theology, they are radically different. And I think it's very important to understand the radical difference. Now, for me, what I love about Hinduism is that Hinduism is not a God-focused religion. It is not theocentric. It is anthropocentric, Hinduism and Buddhism. Whereas the Abrahamic coalition are theocentric. What does this mean? In the Abrahamic coalition, God is the creator and the ruler of the world. He is in charge, but in his absence, the clergy is issuing the commands. God gives commands, and the clergy, Jewish, Islamic, and Christian, interpret those commands, those laws of God, and apply them, or try to apply them to themselves and to others. Hinduism is not theocentric. There are 6 classical schools of Hindu philosophy, and 4 of them are non-theistic. In actual fact, there is a definition in the Mahabharata that is given for Hinduism. Hinduism is known as, you all know, as Sanatana Dharma. It says, Advaita Sarva Bhutanam Maitraha Karuna Evacha, that there are 3 qualities which define Sanatana Dharma. Advaita Sarva Bhutanam, not hating any living being, freedom of all animosity or harm to any living being by word, deed, or thought. Anugrahascha, compassion, and dhanam, generosity, dhamma, dhamma, sanatana. These qualifications of sanatana. So in this definition, there is no reference to a God. You can be a perfectly orthodox Hindu and not actually believe in God. If you are practicing adroha, non-prejudice towards any living being, if you are practicing compassion and generosity, then you are Indian, Sanatana Dharma. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives this whole course in 18 chapters to Arjuna. At the end of the chapter, at the end of the 18th chapter, he says to Arjuna, Etat sarvam vimrashya yetechasi katapu. He says, having reflected well upon everything that I taught you, do as you wish. So Hinduism is not command-based, it is Upadesha-based. Adesha is command. Upadesha means instruction. Instruction is different. Because when somebody gives a command, you don't have much of an option. But when you are given instruction, and Krishna tries to convince Arjuna through logic, reasoning, and argument. He never says to Arjuna any time, I am God, listen to what I'm telling you. He always says to Arjuna, Arjuna questions him, and he answers. And in Manusmriti, there is a beautiful verse which says, Yaskatena anusandhata dharma veda netara. There is only one way for understanding dharma, is to investigate with tarka. Tarka means logic, reasoning, argument. And when you begin the classical study of Hinduism, Vedanta, which the philosophy of Hinduism is known as Vedanta, when you begin the study of Vedanta, you first need to study Nyaya. Nyaya is the science of logic, and Mimamsa. Mimamsa is hermeneutics, the way that how to interpret text. So reason and interpretation are the basics which are required for the study of Vedanta. And it is this ability to inquire into the absolute truth using reason, using logical argument, which you find in Hinduism and Buddhism, but you do not find in the Abrahamic coalition. In the Abrahamic coalition, ultimately, everything boils down to faith. You must have faith, and don't question, don't argue, just accept that this is the word of God, and it's the way it is. And that whoever's interpreting it, they are the authority. So Hinduism says not all religions are equal. In Hinduism there is a concept of philosophy, and the term in Sanskrit for philosophy is darshana. Darshana means a view of reality. So you've got Saiva Siddhanta Darshana, you've got the Saiva Siddhanta view, you've got the Vaishnava Darshana, you've got the Visishta Dvaita Darshana, you have got the Kashmiri Shaiva Darshana, you've got the Shakta Darshana. You've got so many different ways of looking at the truth. But ultimately the Veda says, Ekam Sat, the truth is one, but people view it differently and interpret it differently. So there are many facets of the truth. All religions present different facets, but not all those facets are equal in their value or in their actual glimpse of the truth. So some are possible to be true than others. They're all ostensibly looking at the same reality. So according to Vedanta, all religions are valid insofar as they are Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. Satyam, they must be based on truth, objective, rational truth. Sundaram, there must be beauty in the religion. There must be joy and happiness. If there is no Sundaram, if there is no joy, there is no happiness, there is no upliftment, personal upliftment, then it is invalid. And the third quality is Shivam. Shivam is beneficial, universally beneficial. Beneficial not only to Hindus, but to all living beings. And that is another great quality of Hindus that I love above all else. In Judaism, when you pray, you say, Dear God, give peace to the house of Israel. May all Jews throughout the world be happy, and they may be safe. Christians say, God, each and every church says, God, make us Christians happy in the fellowship of Christ. Except the other Christians that we don't like, they think they help. And the Muslims basically pray for the well-being of the Sunnis, if they're Sunnis, and Shiites, if they're Shiites, and if they're not, then but Hebrew says, Sarve Sham Mangalam Bhavatu, Sarve Sham Shanti Bhavatu. May all beings be happy. May all beings be filled with peace. May all the worlds be happy. Not even the human plane. We're also saying may all the alien worlds also be happy. May all beings throughout the three worlds be happy. And this to me is the greatness of the human being, that it is so universal and that it is never parochial and never ethnocentric. And this is why I say that Hinduism is an anthropocentric religion. In actual fact, it's geocentric. The whole world is included within it. And with that, I would like to